Now, UK Finance Chief George Osborne has issued a stark warning to the EU, saying it needs urgent reforms to regain its competitiveness and that Britain could leave the bloc if it fails to do so. Let's now get some details on this from our Laura Smith, who is in London for us. So, Laura, as we can see, some very strong words from Chancellor. What has prompted this?
Well, I think the why is pretty easily summed up by an analogy that George Osborne used near to the beginning of his speech on Wednesday, where he said Europe's like a burning building with no exits. Basically, he sees the political bloc as falling behind India and China, overspending on welfare, becoming less and less competitive, essentially an economic and political bloc in decline. Domestically, of course, here in the UK, the EU is losing popularity. People see it as very expensive, increasingly power hungry, and also the originator of an awful lot of red tape. But Osborne's central message today was that the UK is not pushing for reform for its own sake. Oh no, it's pushing for reform for everybody else's sake, for Europe's sake as a whole. So he was talking about the tabling of legal challenges at the European Court of Justice. He said it's not anti-European, but in fact it's a way of preserving values that are traditionally seen to be European, such as non-discrimination. He talked about the calling for a rejection of the financial services reform, which of course include a cap on bankers' bonuses, which is quite controversial here in the UK because London competes with New York and Hong Kong. It's not competing inside Europe, and anything that damages the city of London also damages Europe as a whole. But here he is, George Osborne, summing up what his central message was on Wednesday.
Now, some on the continent like to assume this is just the UK pursuing its own self-interest at the expense of the collective good. But it's the opposite. If we cannot protect the collective interests of non-Eurozone member states, then they will have to choose between joining the euro, which the UK will not do, or leaving the European Union.
And these rifts and these calls for reform between London and Brussels keep on opening up. The latest is over introducing more human rights into the UK, in fact. Brussels has talked about imposing the EU's Charter of Human Rights on all its member countries, which would possibly mean legal challenges to businesses and to government. The UK already opted out of that in 1998. So to the government, it's sort of like going back into the past and doing something again. And that's the latest in a long line of proposals as Brussels tries to ramp up the political union inside the bloc, political integration. But George Osborne's message and the message of the Conservative Party here in the UK as a whole is reform or die.
All right, Laura, thank you so much for bringing us the details from London on this. Laura Smith reporting there for us.